Okay. All right. Can you see that, Dwayne?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Looks great.
All right, good. Cool.
Yeah, it's working. Okay, and it's working on YouTube as well.
All right.
Yes. Yep. Looks great.
Yeah, it's working. Okay, and it's working on YouTube as well. Okay, Dwayne, I will make you the host of the meeting now.
And I made a note to myself as soon as it's over to end it.
Yeah, correct. So that also the YouTube will end. That's exactly.
Yep.
Okay, you are the host. You're good. YouTube is working. We got 6 people already connected in YouTube. I'm sure more will join in the next 10 minutes.
Great. Thanks.
All right, guys, Godspeed.
Okay. Thank you.
You too at your meeting.
Thanks.
I wish we could get a list of the people who are participating or visiting on YouTube, so we kind of have an idea of, what districts or divisions or whatever we're getting, better crowds from, and where else we might need to work on.
Yeah. I'll send Andrea a note just to tell him we're anxious to get all the info we can. We'll count some even more if we can get it.
Yeah. Okay, so this is just District 8. So this central region is just District 8, Central, Eastern, and Western.
Yeah, so it's 3
Okay.
districts, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, based on, I guess, the time zone that we're working with.
Part of it might be mountain time, I think. But I had to pick a time to start. Okay, welcome and thank you for joining us tonight. I got just a quick couple of remarks that are mostly housekeeping before we'll get underway here. My name is Dwayne Rose. I'm a division chief in the H Directorate for Recruiting and Retention. One of the ways we can help meet our objectives to get new and retain current members is to offer training that will support the knowledge that HR Team USA Auxiliary needs, and that's why we're here. Tonight's training is on best practices and the recently rewritten new member application, the 7001. I would mention that we have 2 additional presentations that will follow later this year. Coming soon will be critical forms, including the 7035 change in membership status. We want to try and get that to you before the disenrollments and retirements get hot and heavy to be of service to you. And then I would mention that for purposes of delivering this training, we tried to break it into logical parts. And we basically came up with 3 groups of districts. We did a Eastern, Central, and Pacific, rather than just the Atlantic and Pacific that the Coast Guard uses. We are using YouTube, as you know. One of the reasons we're doing that is for some of our sessions, we have more participants than Zoom can support. So that's why we're getting you the presentation that way. We can just reach more people in less time to deliver the training that we're trying to get out to you. You will see in the Zoom YouTube format under the topic description, there's a place there where there's a link to a form you can use to submit questions to us. You can do that during the presentation or later, and we won't be able to deliver answers until after the session is over. But I promise we'll answer every question. If for some reason you don't want to use the link, you can email me directly, or if you have a problem with the link, you can email me. Again, my name is Dwayne Rose. and you can find my email in the AUX officer directory. But it's aux.rose, my last name ROOS .hr@gmail.com. But just if you can also look me up in the directory. It's really easy. Basically, that's it for the housekeeping. So let's get underway. Your presenter tonight is Rio Anas. He is a branch chief in the H Directorate in my division. He is also a division commander, a district staff officer for HR, division staff officer for HR, FSOHR, and FSOMS, just in case he gets bored. I share these same offices with him, except for the last one, the FSOMS. Anyway, thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the session. We've gotten pretty good feedback on it so far. So, Rio, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll get started here in the process. So, effectively utilizing best HR practices in HR. And does it matter? Well, it absolutely does. The better we can do our job, the better it is for prospects coming in. They'll have a good feel for what we're about, and we do it efficiently. They're going to feel like we really know our business, and they're going to be better attitude about joining an organization that's well run. And HR, well, it's not rocket science. It's just knowing the rules and process and consistently following it. Some of you may be new to the HR process and may never handled a new prospect at all, or the application process, and it might seem pretty daunting, but it actually isn't. It's relatively easy. It just takes, doing it and getting through the process, and you'll find out how easy it really is. So, welcome to all HR officers and other staff, elected officers. But I'd like to let HR know that we're really important to the organization. I know we're kind of behind the scenes, but if we're effective at doing our job, then we get in a lot of new members. And although we're not, maybe not, the people that are doing the exciting job, being out on the water or in the air, or in a Coast Guard station or on a cutter, our job is extremely important, because if we don't do our job well, then there won't be members to be out doing those exciting parts of the job. So we're always going to be that go-to person for new members that come in, because we develop that initial relationship with them. And so they're always going to come to us with questions of how to do various things. And even if we have a mentoring program, we might still be that person they're going to come ask questions to. Even after a few years that they're, in the organization, they may still come to us. And even if it's not a question that you might have an answer to, it's really helpful if you can guide them to getting the correct answer. Work with them to do that, because we are all Team Coast Guard. So, little presentation note here. We write a guideline or a process, and we're delivering this to across the nation. But I also recognize that there are different districts or DIROCs that might have nuances, slightly different things that they do. So during the presentation, if what we're covering doesn't seem to be exactly what you do, just check with your chain of leadership and make sure. This is like an overall process that is a general guidance to everybody in doing the job, but there might be specifics that are slightly different. What we're going to cover is some parts of the initial contact with the prospect and some vital interview points. The application process, we're really going to dig into that. And then the follow-up, next steps. And we'll actually, as I said, we're going to dig into the application. So we're going to talk about each page and some of the fine points, things to be aware of while you're working through that application. And questions, as Dwayne said, you can submit those using that link and we will get back to you with those answers. So the initial contact, anyone you meet might be a potential auxiliary member. And I'd like to stress that although some of us are in HR on this meeting tonight, it isn't just specifically HR that is the recruiter. The recruiter is anybody in your flotilla. Everybody is a recruiter. Everybody knows somebody, and sharing the story of what you do with somebody in a group, you might find somebody who's interested in doing the same thing and joining you. So obviously you want to be, enthusiastic, friendly, helpful, and reliable. And responding to all communications quickly is really important. We don't want to leave a potential new member just kind of hanging. If they're showing an interest or wanting to join us, we have to show that same interest back to them, that we are welcoming to them. So a note on the auxiliary applicant management system, that's the AAMS system. We do need to make contact notes in there and keep that going, because it does have a 60-day cutoff. If you don't put notes in there, that prospect will drop out of the system and they cannot be recovered. So it's important to respond on that, making notes. Try to be available if you can, respond to inquiries. If you're going to do it, try to do it in a very timely manner. Before you have in-person meetings with prospects, notify your flotilla commander. It's much the same as going out on any mission. There's that, covering yourself. It is in the AUX manual regarding the insurance coverage. We are treated as active duty members, but the only caveat to that is we have to let somebody know that we are going out to do our job, and that way we're covered. So remember, you might be the prospect's, first contact. So it's really important to make a good impression. We do strongly encourage wearing a Coast Guard auxiliary uniform for meetings and be well groomed. That way they get a very good impression of the organization that they're about to join. You can suggest possibly attending a flotilla meeting or an auxiliary event. I'm partial to the auxiliary event. That way they get to see members in action doing whatever that event may be. Maybe it's public affairs, maybe it's teaching boating safety class, but they can see us while we're doing our work. Sometimes flotilla meetings, as some of you know, might be kind of boring, and that might not make a good impression on a new prospect. Don't express any negative opinions of other flotillas. You may know some other flotillas and members elsewhere that, whatever your interaction wasn't, good at all. But that's not something we want to share with a prospect. We don't want to give them any negativity or reasons not to join us. If they think it's, not a cohesive organization, they may look elsewhere. And you always want to make suggestions and decisions based on a prospect's best interest. So although they might not join your flotilla, they might join another flotilla. It's whatever they want to do. If it fits their interest or their location or whatever it might be, the most important thing is that they're actually joining the auxiliary, even though you didn't get them in your own flotilla. As I mentioned before, recruits will always look to you. They'll look to you to be the mentor and the guide, and it'll probably go on for quite some time. So there's lots of things to cover in an interview with this prospect. You'll want to mention the mandatory core and other required training, like the BQC2. We want to make sure that they come in with their eyes open, knowing what is expected of them. We'll want to let them talk about the commitment and satisfaction of service and auxiliary requirements, including technology and reports. Maybe that's something that will scare them away, having to do, computer work. A lot of younger people, it doesn't seem to be an issue, but it could be for, someone else. So again, we want to make sure that they have a good idea of the kind of commitment that they're expected to make. If they have a boating safety certificate or a NASBA approved safe boating course, that's great. We'll need that for the application. It doesn't need to be submitted with the application unless your direct, requires it. But knowing that they have that is great. If they don't, that's okay. We can still accept them. They would just need to go through a boating course later on in order to change their qualification. Share their personal costs, including uniforms, dues, personal transportation, also uniform and grooming standards. So yeah, we are volunteers, and we're not getting any paycheck to do our job. So we want to make sure that this is clear with the prospect that they will have some expense. We can talk about ID cards. You might take a photo of them for future submission. You're going to do it with the red background. They don't necessarily have to have a uniform for their first ID photo, but if you do have a trop shirt that you can loan them for the photo, that would be fine. And then once they are enrolled and they've got through their training, they're ready to get their ID card, you've got that photo that you can use to assist them getting their ID card. And we want to share that Coast Guard story. We do save lives. We may not always know it. Teaching a boating safety class, we're hopefully helping people to be safer boaters, but we don't know if maybe we did save a life by doing that. So, new application process. We always have to use the most current version of the new member application. And the way to get that is you go to the forms warehouse, and that will always be the newest version. I know sometimes HR people might save one to their desktop or something and then keep using that one because they know it's working for them. Well, at some point, that version may have changed. And if you submit an older version, that won't be accepted by your DIROCs. So always go to the forms warehouse. It's best to download the application to your desktop from this location. Although when you click on that, it will open the application. It does not work well that way. You have to download it first, and then all the drop downs should work properly. Just below where the application is, you'll see that there's instructions for enrollment application. They are pretty good instructions, and they'll help you out a lot if you follow them. So have the applicant review the new member study guide and take the exam, which is open book, and it can also be done online. I really find that to be the best way to do it, and that can be found in the Human Resources Directorate under new member class, and that would be the link for it here. So when they review the study guide and they take the exam, it will email their answers and their score to them, which they can just forward that email to you. And that way you know they've actually taken that new member test, and you can use that score to put on the application. They can do it on paper as well. That is an option. And their answer sheet is in the H Directorate there as well for you. It's not available to them. You have to log in with your member ID to get at that answer sheet. When done grading, you can inform them of incorrect answers, but don't provide the correct answers. I mean, if they didn't pass the test, we don't want to give them all the correct answers. But it could be a teaching tool. If they did pass the test, then through discussion, you can give them what the answers would be so they are better informed. If they didn't pass it, they can retake it. There's no problem. They just need to review the new member study guide and go through the process again. As some of you may know, it is 30 multiple choice questions and passing score is 80%. This is where you would find that new member study guide and a new member exam. It is under the H directory, as I mentioned already, and this is what it looks like. You'll see on the left side where it says new member class. That will then bring up your screen with Uncle Sam. You can collect initial dues. Some flotillas do that. It's not required, and I've heard some flotillas say call this a application fee, but there is no such thing as an application fee. Some flotillas are just collecting dues up front based on them getting a bill from district for this new member, which is billed quarterly, so it will be a reduced rate from an initial annual fee. You want to make sure that these dues get straight to your FSO FN, but again, verify with your chain of leadership how this would be handled with your particular flotilla. A fingerprint technician, citizenship verifier, or law enforcement officer can review the passport card or passport with signature, or original or certified birth certificate with trade seal, and approved government photo ID. You do in this application process need to review their social security card, but don't make a copy of that and do not send it with the application. You do need to get copies of the other documents, but follow the application instructions. You'll know which ones to do. Generally, if you've got a passport, you don't need any other documentation at all. At this time, again, as I mentioned, you can review to see if they've got their safe voting certificates. You can check that off on the application and make note of the date and the type of voting safety course that they took. Make sure the new member application package is shared with your flotilla commander as soon as possible. We want to make sure that this is timely. And a flotilla commander's signature is an endorsement, not just signing. That means that they really reviewed it and making sure that it is complete and accurate before it gets sent in. And again, you need to be timely on this. If you wait too long and the application version changes, you may have to start all over again. Your DIROCS may not accept an older version. Some of you may be aware that we used to do that auxiliary association membership form, but that's no longer required. It's actually built into the new application question. Call your potential members as frequently as possible. You want to keep the process going. Timeliness is everything. Although I do know that there are some potential members, and I've dealt with them, where they seem to drag their feet and not get things going, but you need to stay up on top of them. Try to keep this moving along. Get commitments from them. Make sure they really still have an interest in joining. And unless the recruit says they're not joining, continue contacting for at least 3 months. If this is a prospect that came by way of the online inquiry, through that AAMS system, make sure you're updating notes on this. When inviting them to flotilla meetings, make sure you send your meeting reminders at least 3 days prior to the next meeting. That way they can make plans and know about the meeting. Short last minute notice, they may not be available. As I mentioned, we want to check progress with the paperwork and see if there's anything we can do, any questions we can answer, anything we can help out with. And again, get them to make a commitment to get going on this. So here's the application. We're going to talk about some of the fine points here, things to be aware of. So you must, again, you have to use the current version of the application. You see in the upper left corner, it will say that currently, this is the February 25, 0225 version. If somebody does not have a middle name, you can add in the box NMN, which means no middle name. If they do not have a suffix, then don't put anything in a box, not even NA, just leave it blank. And suffix means like junior, senior, first, second. I have seen people use a prefix of Mr. or Mrs. in that box. It is good to complete all three occupation codes, but it's not required. They could just fill in just one, and that would be fine. Check box for whether they have a boating safety certificate here. And very important, height is in inches only, no fractions or decimals. Sometimes people get pretty creative in their height. And in these boxes here, there are no drop downs, so it is just fill in whatever for the height and the weight. We're still on page 1 here, continuing. Get down to the mailing address or the emergency contact address, even the residential address. We do want to have that zip code +4. So if they don't have the extra 4, it's easy enough to look up. You could add this yourself on their application if they didn't put that on there already. This website here I find very easy to work with. Page 2, section 1. So talk about potential military service, yes or no. This is quite a change from the last application version you might have been familiar with. A lot more extensive, but this is also a lot of drop-down boxes here for the branch of service, their status, their pay grade, separation date, and such. So it should work pretty well for somebody who's been in the service. They'll know how to answer those questions. If the person does not have a DD-214, this website here for the archives.gov, Veterans Military Service Records, works pretty well. I've used it myself, and I believe within 2-3 weeks, I've gotten the paperwork that I needed. If their service was National Guard only, without activation to the Army, then they will only have an NGB-22. And that is what you would submit with the application. They won't get a DD-214 if they've not been activated. This is a little streamlined from the previous application versions. So it's just asking if there's any arrest charges, convictions, or other issues. So it's an easy yes or no question. And the applicant would initial both these lower boxes. If there's any doubt whether there's any criminal history at all, no matter how serious they think it is or not serious, they should mark yes anyway and follow the instructions and add the extra sheet of paper to explain what it is that they were involved with and what the outcome was. If they have a court document that shows, the disposition of the case, I would suggest sending that along as well. It's better to answer yes on this and let DIROCS make a decision based on the information they've received than to have this be marked as no and come as a surprise to DIROCS. In that case, they might think somebody was being dishonest and they would be denied. Page 3, section 3 and 4. If the person is under 18 years of age, we obviously want to get a parent or guardian's name and signature here. And section 4, the applicant consent. They'll read through these, 5 points here. Point 5 or point 4 actually talks about that Coast Guard Auxiliary Association. And if they want to find out more about it, they click on the name. It's a link that will take them to get the information they're looking for. If they want to know what that's about. Then the applicant would sign here. There is no requirement at this time for blue or black ink restriction on signatures, but that may differ with your die rods. At one time, District 9 was strictly blue, but now that has eased up to be blue or black. Page 4, Section 5. Obviously, we want to check off, are they a U.S. citizen? Then we have reviewing of the Social Security card here, making sure it's a valid Social Security card. But we do not make a copy of it. We do not send it with the application. And then if they have a passport, you check the box here, that you would make a copy of. And if it's an actual passport, make sure it's signed. If it's a passport card, that's fine. If the passport is expired, then you can still use it, but you'll need one other piece of identification. And that would be a driver's license. That works very well. So if a person does not have a passport, then you need one item from list B or C. Most likely that's going to be a driver's license from list B, and most likely a birth certificate from list C. But it could be any of these other documents. Again, persons to review this information, these documents, and to sign off would be your fingerprint technician, your citizenship verifier, or law enforcement officer. Page 5, Section 6. So we want to check some boxes here. It's a new enrollment, or is it a re-enrollment? If it's a re-enrollment, you'll need to try to find out their last district disenrollment month and year and their previous ID number. You should only have to check the boxes that are relevant to what you're working with here. Complies with Coast Guard tattooing, body marking. You do that one. Are they a current youth or adult? Member of the Boy Scouts, Sea Scouts. If they're not, then you don't have to check the box at all. Next one down, new member exam. This is where we put in the date and score of their new member exam. Did we read the Privacy Act statement? And then this is where we put in the information regarding voting safety certificate. And you'd also mark, yes or no. If it's no, obviously you don't have any information to fill in below. Did we review the citizenship status? Check that box. Copy of DD 214. If they're not prior military, you wouldn't even do anything with that. The arrest, charges, convictions, we would check this box because we did review it. And did they initial the boxes? And consent to initial an annual background check. Did they sign that sheet? The extra sheet of paper regarding any criminal history, is that included with the application? You check that. And do you know if the new member will be immediately supporting the Coast Guard unit? Read that and you would check that box. So it's really pretty straightforward on this new application. So we have the applicant go through this and with the interviewer. This I find is a good template for my initial interview with a prospect. Before I even have them fill out an application, I'm using this as a guide for my conversation with them. It's pretty good. It covers everything I want to know about them, and it lets them know what we're expecting of them. And that interview is really a two-way street. They need to know whether they feel like we're a good fit for them, as well as us wanting to know whether they're a good fit for us. So we want to have a good open conversation on that. Page 6, pretty easy. The signatures here. We'll have whoever the interviewer was, their position, they'll sign off. Then we have the applicant signing after this. They've acknowledged and reviewed and understand and agreed to items discussed, in this section. And then we have the flotilla commander sign off. Again, flotilla commander signature. is a verification. They've actually reviewed this application, making sure it's complete and accurate. One of the worst things we can do is send in an application to DIROX, and we know how slow the process can be sometimes, but if there are errors on the application where things need to get redone or there's a hold up based on getting extra information, that's a delay that we might have avoided had we made sure that everything was right before we sent it in. And we don't do anything with Section 9. That is for the Director of Auxiliary. So some additional notes here. Applications to be submitted, printed single-sided. If you are sending in original applications to your DIROX. Again, review with the chain of leadership on the kind of ink that's required. Maybe they're liberal enough that it's blue or black. Be aware of signatures with stale dates. And that would mean that your applicant has completed his application, signed off on it, and then 4 months down the road, he's finally getting it to you and getting around to doing the new member exam. Well, that's a 4-month-old signature, and that might not be accepted. So the best thing to do is when you're ready to send it out, get some current signatures. And you could do that on the same application, just have them sign, above, below, or beside their first signature with a new date. Currently only need one set of paperwork. I remember several years back, we used to send in 2 sets of paperwork, but we don't need to do that anymore. Although it is a pretty good idea to keep a copy of this application until the processing is complete and your applicant is enrolled. Should there be any issues, you've got a copy to, resend in instead of starting from scratch again. And you should adhere to the Coast Guard P2 requirements. Again, remember AUX 10 consent to membership, although that is still in the forms warehouse. We don't need to do that form anymore. It's embedded in the new application. Fingerprints are not required. They haven't been for several years now. Instructions, now separate document in forms warehouse. So if you need to know how to fill out the application, it's that extra document. It's pretty comprehensive and easy to follow. Before sending in an application package, review it and then review again. Maybe use somebody else to look it over, make sure that there isn't something missing on it. And do you know where to send the packet? I don't know what your specific process is in your district, in 8th district, but you need to know who you're sending it to and verify with the chain of leadership. If you are doing mailing, some of you may not know that you can get postage materials free. Just go through your materials officer and have them order some stamps and envelopes for you. Priority mail is faster, and it does include tracking, but you can verify with your chain of leadership if that is something that you should do, need to do, or it's just an option. Never, never, never fail to pursue a prospect lead. Always follow up. We never want to let that go. Timeliness, again, is everything. You want to be a broken record. Ask for prospect referrals. Never respond, nothing to report. I see that a lot at monthly meetings. Again, we need to engage all members of the flotilla. Everybody is a recruiter. At least mention this in a flotilla meeting that there's a need for member referrals and or recruit one. Make ways to find new members. Part of your plan, whether it's your public affairs, public education, vessel exams, and then outside associations, Rotary, Lions Club, your church, anywhere that you might be or any event you're at could be a potential to find a new member. You're out doing a vessel exam, maybe you've got a boater that's pretty knowledgeable, and maybe he would be a good addition to our group. He might be, interested in doing the boat exams, the very thing we just did with that person. And obviously PA events, we're always trying to do recruiting there, but it could be public education with teaching the boating safety class. You might find people in there that could be a good prospect for the auxiliary. So always keep your eyes open and talk up the auxiliary. Make that part of your introduction to public education class for sure. Recruit, mentor, retain, repeat. Always want to keep going through that. So this would be questions. If you haven't already submitted some questions, you can use that link again, as Wayne mentioned in the beginning. And anytime you're recruiting, you're doing an interviewing, you're helping somebody fill out an application, be sure and record your time on the 7030 or an Aux Data 2 using the 90C code. And even attending this session here, this is training. So make this on your 7029 using 99B. Or if you're really good at Aux Data 2, you can input it in there as well. So, here is our contact information. Give you a chance to jot that down. I know Dwayne was trying to give his email earlier, but here you have it. And thank you for attending tonight. I know it seemed kind of quick, but it usually takes a little longer when there's a back and forth exchange with questions and answers. Dwayne?
Just one thing I would mention, there's a wealth of personal information that you receive when you fill out an application, and it's our job, the Coast Guard requires that we do safeguard that. They call it PII, the personally identifiable information. We don't really want people to fill out the application and then email it to us, because the civilian email is not protected like the military is. So the best thing is to fill it out together, or have them fill it out and they can mail it to you or drop it off. But when I tried, when this application first came out, I tried to password protect it and it wouldn't let me. And I am assuming they're going to fix that. Because if you can password protect it, have them then send the document to you and then send a separate email with just the password and nothing else. That's one way to protect the information. That's and then one thing, I'm not sure if we mentioned it, but the new application, is like Rio said, is better in many ways. It's somewhat simpler. A nice feature also is that the instructions are a separate document. In the older applications, the instructions are part of the document, and very often when people printed it, they would print those out too, and they would mail those in. It's just kind of a waste of time and paper. So that's one thing that's helpful. But I'm personally very glad that you could join us, and we're trying to get this out. We've gotten good reviews, and people think it's pretty helpful. But we always want to improve. So if you have any ideas and questions, please get those to us. But thanks again for coming, and I hope you're looking forward to some more training. Have a good evening. I'm all set if you're all set, Rio.
Yes, I'm all set.
Okay. Thanks everyone.
Okay.
All
Have a good night.
So I'm going to end it so we can end the Zoom
Okay.
and the YouTube.
Oh,
So
and
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
all right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.